You've been told that manifesting wealth is hard. You've been sold courses, systems, and secrets that promise to unlock the mystery of abundance, but somehow you're still struggling. What if I told you that quantum manifestation is actually stunningly simple, and the reason you think it's impossible is because an entire industry profits from your confusion? Here's what's really happening. While you're spinning your wheels with complicated visualization techniques and endless affirmations, there's a quantum truth so elegantly simple that it would collapse a multi-billion-dollar industry overnight if everyone understood it. The financial institutions, the self-help gurus selling you complexity, they all depend on you believing that manifestation is this mystical, difficult process that requires years of study and practice. But quantum physics reveals something completely different. At the most fundamental level of reality, your consciousness isn't separate from the field of infinite possibilities. You're not trying to attract something from outside yourself. You're literally collapsing wave functions through the simple act of embodied knowing. The wealthy understand this instinctively. They don't visualize having money. They simply know they have access to it. There's a profound difference between wanting and knowing, and that difference is where quantum manifestation lives. Think about the last time something manifested effortlessly in your life. Maybe you needed a parking spot, and one appeared exactly when you needed it. Maybe you thought of an old friend and they called you that same day. Maybe you had a strong knowing about taking a different route home, and later discovered you avoided an accident. In those moments, you weren't trying to manifest. You weren't doing complicated techniques. You were simply in a state of natural coherence with the quantum field. The observer effect in quantum mechanics tells us that consciousness doesn't just witness reality, it participates in creating it. When you observe a quantum system, you collapse infinite possibilities into one specific outcome. But here's what the complexity merchants don't want you to understand. This isn't something you have to learn how to do. You're already doing it every moment of every day. The question isn't whether you can influence reality through consciousness. The question is, are you doing it consciously or unconsciously? Wall Street operates on a fundamental understanding of this principle, but they've dressed it up in language that makes it seem like something entirely different. When traders talk about market sentiment, consumer confidence, or the psychology of money, they're actually describing collective consciousness shaping financial reality. They know that money flows where attention goes, that belief systems create economic outcomes, and that fear and confidence are literally creative forces in the marketplace. But they've convinced you that you need their systems, their expertise, their permission to participate in this creative process. They've made you believe that wealth creation is complicated, that it requires special knowledge, advanced degrees, insider information, or complex strategies. This is the greatest lie ever told about money, and it's designed to keep you dependent on their institutions while they use the very principles of consciousness and energy that you possess naturally. The truth is that your nervous system is a quantum broadcasting device. Every emotion you feel, every belief you hold, every state of being you embody is sending out a specific frequency into the quantum field. This isn't metaphysical speculation. This is measurable science. The HeartMath Institute has documented how your heart generates an electromagnetic field that extends several feet beyond your body and changes based on your emotional state. When you're in coherence, when your heart and brain are synchronized, you're literally broadcasting a different frequency into the field around you. Now think about how Wall Street has conditioned you to feel about money: anxiety, fear, scarcity, unworthiness, the belief that you have to work incredibly hard for very little return. These aren't just thoughts. They're frequency signatures that you're broadcasting into the quantum field. And the field responds by matching that frequency with corresponding experiences. You're manifesting perfectly, but you're manifesting from a state of incoherence that's been deliberately cultivated to keep you small. The wealthy don't have different access to the quantum field than you do. They simply have different programming about what's possible and what they deserve. When a billionaire makes a decision to acquire a company, they don't hope it will work out. They don't visualize success while secretly fearing failure. They operate from an embodied knowing that resources will align to support their vision. This isn't positive thinking, this is quantum coherence. Here's a practical example of how this works in everyday life. Imagine you're looking for a new job. The traditional approach that you've been taught is to update your resume, apply to dozens of positions, network frantically, and hope that someone will choose you. This entire approach is based on scarcity consciousness. You're operating from the belief that opportunities are limited, that you have to compete for resources, and that your value is determined by external validation. But quantum manifestation works completely differently. Instead of chasing opportunities from a place of need, you first align with the frequency of the person who already has the perfect job. You don't visualize getting the job. You embody being the person who naturally attracts ideal opportunities. You feel into the state of being valued, appreciated, and well compensated for your unique gifts. You operate from abundance rather than scarcity. When you're in this state of embodied knowing, something fascinating happens in the quantum field. Opportunities begin to appear that you couldn't have planned or predicted. Someone mentions a position that's perfect for you. A company reaches out unexpectedly. A conversation leads to a connection that opens a door you didn't even know existed. This isn't coincidence. This is consciousness organizing reality to match your internal frequency. The financial industry has spent decades convincing you that this kind of synchronicity is rare, lucky, or reserved for other people. They want you to believe that security comes from following their prescribed paths. Save a little money in low-interest accounts, invest in their managed funds, work for 40 years, and hope you have enough to retire. This system is designed to generate profits for them while keeping you in a perpetual state of financial anxiety. But what if you understood that your relationship with money is actually a reflection of your relationship with the quantum field itself? Money is simply energy in a form that allows for easy exchange. It flows toward coherence and away from resistance. It accumulates where it's welcomed and appreciated, and it becomes scarce where it's feared or resented. The most successful entrepreneurs understand this intuitively. They don't start with detailed business plans and market research, though they may do those things later. They start with a vision that excites them, a knowing that they can create value in the world, and a willingness to take action from inspiration rather than desperation. They understand that business success isn't about competing for limited resources. It's about expanding the pie by creating new value. This is why so many traditional business models are failing while innovative companies seem to appear out of nowhere and dominate entire industries almost overnight. The old paradigm was based on scarcity, competition, and control. The new paradigm is based on abundance, collaboration, and flow. Companies that align with quantum principles of consciousness and energy naturally attract resources, talent, and opportunities that seem impossible to their competitors, who are still operating from old paradigms. So here's where it gets fascinating. Your brain is constantly filtering reality based on what it believes is possible and important. This is called the reticular activating system, and it's the reason you suddenly notice red cars everywhere after you decide you want to buy a red car. But this filtering system isn't just passive observation, it's active participation in quantum reality creation. When you believe that wealth is difficult to create, your brain filters out opportunities that would be obvious to someone with abundance consciousness. When you believe that you have to work incredibly hard for money, you literally cannot see the easier paths that are available. When you believe that rich people are somehow different from you, you unconsciously sabotage opportunities that would elevate your financial position. But when you understand that wealth is simply energy flowing toward coherence and value creation, everything changes. You begin to notice opportunities that were always there but invisible to your previous programming. You start to see money as a tool for expression and contribution rather than a scarce resource to be hoarded or worried about. You recognize that your unique gifts and perspectives have inherent value that the market is eager to reward. This shift in perception isn't just philosophical, it creates measurable changes in your behavior and your results. When you're operating from abundance consciousness, you make different decisions. You invest in yourself and your growth rather than hoarding money out of fear. You collaborate rather than compete. You create value rather than just trying to extract it. You take inspired action rather than grinding from desperation. The quantum field responds to this shift by organizing circumstances to match your new frequency. Resources appear when you need them. The right people show up at the right time. Opportunities align in ways that feel almost magical but are actually the natural result of consciousness, coherently interfacing with the field of infinite possibilities. Now let me share something that might challenge everything you've been taught about goal setting and manifestation. The traditional approach tells you to set specific goals, create detailed plans, and work systematically toward predetermined outcomes. But quantum manifestation works through what I call directional intention, rather than specific attachment. Here's what I mean by that. When you're attached to specific outcomes, you're actually limiting the field of possibilities to what your current mind can conceive. But the quantum field has access to infinite possibilities, including solutions and opportunities that are far beyond what you can currently imagine. When you hold your intention lightly, like a compass pointing toward your desired experience rather than a rigid map with predetermined destinations, you allow the field to deliver outcomes that exceed your expectations. Think about the most successful people you know, whether in business, relationships, or creative endeavors. They rarely achieve success by following the exact plan they started with. Instead, they maintained clarity about the experience they wanted to create, while remaining flexible about how it would manifest. They followed their excitement and inspiration, adapted to new information and opportunities, and trusted the process even when they couldn't see the complete picture. This is the difference between forcing and allowing, between manipulation and manifestation. When you try to force outcomes through willpower and effort alone, you're working against the natural flow of the quantum field. When you align your consciousness with your desired experience and then take inspired action, you're working with quantum principles rather than against them. But here's where most people get stuck, and it's exactly where the complexity merchants want you to stay confused. They've convinced you that alignment is complicated, that you need special techniques, specific meditations, or advanced spiritual practices to achieve coherence with the quantum field. The truth is that alignment is your natural state. Complexity is what takes you out of alignment. Watch a child who wants something. They don't create vision boards or repeat affirmations. They simply know what they want, feel excited about it, and naturally move toward it. They don't question whether they deserve it or worry about how it will happen. They're in perfect quantum coherence because they haven't yet learned all the reasons why things should be difficult. This natural state of knowing and allowing is what you're returning to when you understand quantum manifestation. You're not learning something new. You're unlearning the limitations that have been programmed into your consciousness by systems that profit from your confusion and dependence. The financial system wants you to believe that money is scarce, that you have to compete for limited resources, and that security comes from following their prescribed paths. The self-help industry wants you to believe that manifestation is complicated, that you need their courses and systems, and that transformation takes years of difficult work. Both of these industries collapse when you understand the simple truth of quantum consciousness. You are not separate from the field of infinite possibilities. You are not trying to attract something from outside yourself. You are literally the consciousness through which the quantum field experiences and expresses itself in physical reality. When you align with this truth, when you embody the frequency of what you desire to experience, the field naturally organizes circumstances to match your state of being. This isn't wishful thinking or positive psychology. This is quantum physics applied to human consciousness and practical life. The observer effect, quantum entanglement, the holographic principle, wave-particle duality, these aren't just abstract scientific concepts. They're descriptions of how consciousness interfaces with reality to create experience. When you understand that your attention is literally creative, that your emotional state broadcasts a frequency, that the field matches with corresponding experiences, that your beliefs filter what possibilities you can perceive and receive, everything changes. You stop trying to get things from the world and start expressing things into the world. You stop asking what you can extract and start asking what you can contribute. You stop operating from scarcity and start operating from the abundance that is your natural state. But let me tell you what really happens when you begin to embody this understanding. At first, your old programming will resist. Your mind will tell you that this is too simple, that surely manifestation must be more complicated than this. Your nervous system might feel uncomfortable with the idea of receiving without struggle, of having without working incredibly hard, of being abundant without feeling guilty. This resistance isn't a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's actually evidence that you're beginning to deprogram from the limitations that have kept you small. Every belief system that no longer serves you will surface to be examined and released. Every fear about your worthiness, your capabilities, your right to abundance will come up for healing. This is where most people turn back toward complexity. When the simplicity of quantum manifestation starts to work, when synchronicities begin to increase and opportunities start appearing, the old programming says, "This can't be right, it shouldn't be this easy." So they go back to complicated systems and difficult practices because struggle feels more familiar than flow. Are you beginning to see how perfectly designed this trap is? The very simplicity that makes quantum manifestation accessible to everyone is also what makes people doubt its validity. We've been so conditioned to believe that anything worthwhile must be difficult that we reject the natural ease of working with quantum principles. So let me ask you something, and I want you to really feel into this question, rather than just thinking about it intellectually. What if ease is actually the sign that you're aligned with natural law rather than working against it? What if the struggle you've been taught to value is actually evidence that you're swimming upstream against the current of the quantum field? Think about the processes in nature that create the most beauty and abundance. Does a tree struggle to grow? Does a flower force itself to bloom? Does a river fight to flow downhill? Nature operates through principles of least resistance and maximum expression. The quantum field organizes itself according to these same principles of elegant efficiency and natural flow. When you're aligned with quantum principles, manifestation feels natural and effortless because you're working with the fundamental forces of reality rather than against them. When you're operating from programmed limitations, everything feels difficult because you're trying to create outcomes while simultaneously broadcasting frequencies that contradict what you desire. Where in your life right now are you making things more complicated than they need to be? Where are you struggling against the current instead of allowing the natural flow of abundance to carry you toward your desires? What would change if you trusted that the quantum field is actually designed to support your highest expression, rather than test your worthiness through difficulty? If you're feeling a spark of recognition right now, if something in your consciousness is saying, yes, this feels true, then hit that subscribe button because we're just getting started. There's so much more to explore about how quantum consciousness interfaces with practical reality, and I want to make sure you don't miss any of these insights. But before we go deeper into the specific mechanics of quantum manifestation, I need to address something that might be coming up for you right now. You might be thinking, if this is so simple, why isn't everyone wealthy and abundant? This is exactly the right question to ask, and the answer reveals something profound about how consciousness and conditioning interact with the quantum field. The reason not everyone is manifesting abundance isn't because quantum principles don't work for everyone. It's because most people are unconsciously manifesting from states of fear, limitation, and scarcity that have been programmed into their nervous systems from childhood. They're perfectly manifesting experiences that match their unconscious beliefs about what's possible and what they deserve. Remember, the quantum field doesn't judge your desires or decide whether you're worthy of abundance. It simply responds to the frequency you're broadcasting through your thoughts, emotions, beliefs, and state of being. If you're unconsciously broadcasting unworthiness, the field will match that frequency with experiences of lack. If you're unconsciously broadcasting fear about money, the field will match that frequency with financial instability. This is why traditional positive thinking often fails to create lasting change. You can't override unconscious programming with conscious thoughts alone. You have to address the deeper patterns in your nervous system, the beliefs that were installed before you had the capacity to question them, the emotional imprints that continue to broadcast old frequencies even when your mind knows better. But here's the beautiful thing about quantum consciousness. Once you understand how the system actually works, you can begin to consciously reprogram your internal broadcasting system. You can identify the frequencies you've been unconsciously transmitting and deliberately shift into coherence with the experiences you actually want to create. This isn't about suppressing negative thoughts or pretending everything is perfect when it's not. It's about developing the capacity to feel your current reality fully, while simultaneously holding the frequency of your desired experience. It's about learning to be with what is, while embodying what's becoming. Think of it like tuning a radio. Right now, you might be unconsciously tuned to the frequency of financial struggle, relationship difficulty, or health challenges. These stations are broadcasting constantly, and as long as you're tuned to them, that's what you'll experience. But there are infinite other stations available, including frequencies of abundance, love, vitality, and creative expression. Quantum manifestation is the process of consciously tuning your internal radio to the frequency of the experience you want to live. When you're consistently broadcasting from the frequency of abundance, the quantum field responds by organizing circumstances that match that vibration. When you're consistently broadcasting from the frequency of love, you attract relationships and experiences that reflect that state of being. The wealthy understand this principle intuitively, even if they don't use quantum language to describe it. They maintain internal states of confidence, possibility, and resourcefulness regardless of external circumstances. They don't wait for conditions to be perfect before they feel abundant. They embody abundance first, and then conditions align to match that internal state. This is the opposite of how most people approach wealth creation. Most people think they'll feel abundant when they have more money, but quantum principles work in reverse. You have to feel abundant first, and then money flows toward that feeling. You have to embody the frequency of success before success manifests in your external reality. But let me show you exactly how this works in practical terms, because I don't want this to remain abstract theory. Let's say you currently earn $50,000 a year, but you want to earn $200,000. The traditional approach would be to figure out how to quadruple your income through better jobs, additional skills, or multiple income streams. And while action is certainly part of the equation, quantum manifestation starts with a completely different foundation. The quantum approach begins with embodying the consciousness of someone who naturally earns $200,000 a year. This isn't about pretending or positive thinking. It's about genuinely shifting your internal frequency to match that reality. Someone who earns $200,000 doesn't worry about money the same way someone earning $50,000 does. They don't make decisions from scarcity. They don't hesitate to invest in themselves or their growth. They don't apologize for their value or undercharge for their services. When you begin to embody this frequency authentically, something remarkable happens in the quantum field. Opportunities begin to appear that match your new state of being. Maybe someone offers you a position with higher responsibility and compensation. Maybe you get an idea for a business or service that excites you. Maybe you discover talents or capabilities you didn't know you had. Maybe existing clients start paying you more because they perceive greater value in what you offer. These aren't coincidences. They're quantum responses to your shifted consciousness. The field is literally reorganizing to match your new frequency. But here's what's crucial to understand. This process requires you to act from your new state of being, even before the external evidence appears. You have to make decisions from abundance consciousness while your bank account still shows $50,000 patterns. This is where most people falter, and it's exactly where the financial system wants you to stay trapped. They've convinced you that you should only spend what you have, only invest what you can afford to lose, only take risks that feel completely safe. This programming keeps you locked in current reality instead of allowing you to step into quantum possibilities. Now, I'm not suggesting you be financially irresponsible or ignore practical considerations, but there's a profound difference between prudent financial management and scarcity-based decision-making. When you're operating from abundance consciousness, you invest in your growth, you value your time appropriately, you create multiple streams of value, and you make decisions that align with your expanded vision rather than your current limitations. The quantum field responds to this coherence between your internal state and your external actions by accelerating the manifestation process. Resources appear when you need them. The right people show up to support your vision. Opportunities align in ways that feel almost orchestrated, because in a very real sense they are orchestrated by your consciousness interfacing with the field of infinite possibilities. But let me address something that might be creating resistance as you hear this. You might be thinking about all the times you've tried to change your financial situation and failed. You might be remembering previous attempts at manifestation that didn't work. You might be feeling skeptical because you've been disappointed before. This is completely understandable, and it's actually important information about how quantum manifestation really works. Most previous attempts at manifestation fail because they're based on wanting rather than knowing, on desperation rather than alignment, on trying to get something from the field rather than expressing something through it. When you want something you don't have, you're broadcasting the frequency of lack. When you desperately need circumstances to change, you're broadcasting the frequency of desperation. The field responds by matching these frequencies with more experiences of wanting and needing. Quantum manifestation works through embodied knowing rather than desperate wanting. It's the difference between I need money and I am abundant. It's the difference between I hope this works and this is already done. It's the difference between trying to convince the universe to give you something and recognizing that you're already connected to everything you need. This shift from wanting to knowing isn't just semantic. It's a fundamental change in your relationship with reality. When you know something, you don't question it, doubt it, or desperately try to make it happen. You simply operate from that knowing and take actions that align with it. When you know you're abundant, you make abundant decisions. When you know you're valuable, you charge appropriately for your services. When you know opportunities are everywhere, you recognize them when they appear. The financial institutions profit from keeping you in wanting consciousness, because wanting creates dependency. When you're always wanting more, always feeling like you don't have enough, always worried about security, you need their products and services. You need their loans, their investment vehicles, their insurance policies, their retirement plans. Your anxiety about money becomes their profit center. But when you understand quantum abundance, when you recognize that wealth is your natural state and scarcity is learned programming, you stop being dependent on their systems. You start creating value instead of just trying to accumulate it. You start generating wealth instead of just managing it. You start operating from internal security instead of seeking external validation. This is why quantum manifestation principles are rarely taught in mainstream financial education. They would collapse entire industries that depend on your continued belief in limitation and scarcity. Think about it. If everyone understood that abundance is their birthright, that wealth flows naturally toward coherence and value creation, that money is simply energy looking for places to grow and expand, how many fear-based financial products would become obsolete overnight? The insurance industry depends on your fear of loss. The banking industry depends on your belief that money is scarce. The investment industry depends on your anxiety about the future. The credit industry depends on your impatience and your belief that you can't afford what you want right now. All of these industries would have to completely transform if people understood the quantum nature of abundance. So let me take you deeper into how this actually works in your nervous system, because this is where the real transformation happens. Your nervous system is constantly scanning your environment for evidence that confirms your existing beliefs about reality. If you believe money is hard to come by, your nervous system will notice every story about economic difficulty, every example of financial struggle, every piece of evidence that confirms scarcity. But your nervous system will literally filter out evidence of abundance, ease, and financial flow because it doesn't match your existing programming. This isn't conscious. It's happening automatically below the level of your awareness. You're living in a reality that's been filtered through beliefs that were installed before you had the capacity to choose them consciously. The process of quantum manifestation involves consciously reprogramming your nervous system to recognize and receive abundance instead of filtering it out. This happens through a combination of embodied practice, conscious attention, and what I call evidence collection. You begin to actively notice examples of ease, flow, and abundance that were always present, but invisible to your previous programming. For instance, you might start noticing how often perfect parking spots appear exactly when you need them. You might become aware of how frequently you think of someone and they contact you shortly afterward. You might observe how often you need information and it shows up through a conversation, a book, or an unexpected source. These aren't random coincidences. They're evidence of your consciousness interfacing with the quantum field to organize reality in supportive ways. As you begin to collect evidence of how the field actually responds to your consciousness, your nervous system starts to relax its hypervigilance around scarcity and opens to receiving abundance. This is a gradual process for most people, not an overnight transformation. Your system needs time to integrate new patterns and release old programming that no longer serves you. But here's what accelerates this process dramatically: taking action from your new understanding, even while your nervous system is still adjusting. When you act from abundance consciousness while your old programming is telling you to be careful, you're literally rewiring your neural pathways through embodied experience. When you invest in your growth despite financial fear, when you charge appropriately for your value despite unworthiness programming, when you make decisions from possibility rather than limitation, you're teaching your nervous system that the new frequency is safe. This is why quantum manifestation requires both inner work and outer action. The inner work shifts your frequency and opens you to new possibilities. The outer action provides evidence to your nervous system that the new frequency is not only safe, but actually more effective than the old patterns. When your nervous system feels safe with abundance, it stops sabotaging your manifestations and starts supporting them. Now, let me share something that might surprise you about how the wealthy actually think about money. They don't think about money the way you've been taught to think about money. They don't see it as something to be saved, hoarded, or worried about. They see money as a tool for creating more value, more opportunity, more impact in the world. They understand intuitively that money is energy, and energy grows when it's circulated rather than when it's stored. This is why wealthy people often seem comfortable with debt, investment, and financial risk in ways that terrify people with scarcity programming. They're not being reckless, they're operating from a completely different understanding of how money actually works. They know that money flows toward value creation, that investments in growth generate returns, that taking calculated risks is actually safer than trying to avoid all risk. But here's what's really fascinating about this difference in perspective. It's not that wealthy people have access to better financial information or superior investment strategies. It's that they have different neural programming about what money is and how it behaves. Their nervous systems are calibrated to abundance rather than scarcity, so they literally perceive different opportunities and possibilities than someone operating from fear-based programming. When you understand money as energy rather than as a scarce resource, everything changes. Energy wants to flow, to grow, to create, to expand. When you align with these natural tendencies instead of trying to control and hoard, money begins to behave very differently in your life. It starts showing up from unexpected sources. It begins to multiply through investments and opportunities that feel almost effortless. It flows toward you because you're operating in harmony with its essential nature rather than against it. This shift in understanding is what I call quantum wealth consciousness, and it's completely different from traditional financial planning or money management. Quantum wealth consciousness recognizes that your relationship with money is actually a reflection of your relationship with life itself. If you're afraid of money, you're probably afraid of power, success, visibility, or responsibility. If you feel guilty about having money, you probably feel guilty about receiving good things in general. If you believe you have to work incredibly hard for money, you probably believe you have to earn love, approval, and worthiness through struggle. These patterns run much deeper than your conscious thoughts about finances. They're embedded in your nervous system, your family programming, your cultural conditioning, and your personal history. Traditional financial advice tries to address money problems at the level of strategy and behavior, but quantum manifestation addresses them at the level of consciousness and energy. When you heal your relationship with receiving, money becomes easier to attract and keep. When you release guilt about having good things, wealth stops feeling uncomfortable or dangerous. When you recognize your inherent worthiness, you stop undercharging for your value or accepting less than you deserve. When you trust the abundance of life itself, you stop making decisions from fear and start making them from possibility. This healing process often brings up everything that's been blocking your natural abundance. Old shame about money, family beliefs about wealth, cultural programming about what you deserve, personal experiences of loss or betrayal around finances. These aren't obstacles to quantum manifestation. They're actually doorways to deeper alignment with abundance consciousness. Every belief that surfaces to be healed is an opportunity to choose a new relationship with prosperity. Every fear that comes up for examination is a chance to replace limitation with possibility. Every old pattern that reveals itself is an invitation to embody a new frequency that serves your highest expression. But let me tell you what happens when you really start to embody quantum wealth consciousness. People around you might become uncomfortable. Your family might worry that you're being unrealistic. Your friends might think you've changed. Your colleagues might feel threatened by your new confidence and clarity about your value. This isn't because you're doing anything wrong. It's because you're stepping out of the collective agreement about limitation and scarcity. When you start operating from abundance consciousness, you become a living example that the old stories about struggle and lack aren't actually true. This can be threatening to people who are still invested in those stories because it challenges their entire worldview. You might find that some relationships change as you embody your new understanding. People who were comfortable with you when you were struggling might become distant when you start thriving. Conversations that used to bond you with others through shared complaints about money might no longer interest you. Social situations that revolve around scarcity consciousness might start to feel draining rather than connecting. This is a natural part of the transformation process, and it's actually evidence that you're successfully shifting your frequency. As you embody abundance consciousness, you'll naturally attract people who operate from similar frequencies while releasing connections that were based on shared limitation. This isn't about judging anyone or thinking you're better than others. It's simply about alignment and resonance. The quantum field organizes relationships, opportunities, and circumstances to match your dominant frequency. When you're consistently broadcasting abundance, creativity, and possibility, you'll find yourself surrounded by people and situations that reflect and amplify these qualities. When you're consistently broadcasting fear, lack, and limitation, you'll attract experiences that match those frequencies. This is why changing your external circumstances often requires changing your internal frequency first. If you try to change your financial situation without addressing the consciousness that created it, you'll likely recreate similar patterns in new forms. But when you shift your consciousness first, external changes happen naturally and sustainably because they're supported by your new frequency rather than contradicted by old programming. So let me ask you something that might reveal where you are in this process right now. When you think about having significantly more money than you currently have, what comes up in your body? Do you feel excited and expansive, or do you feel anxious and contracted? Do you imagine how you could contribute and create with greater resources? Or do you worry about the responsibilities and challenges that might come with wealth? Your body's response to the idea of abundance is valuable information about your current programming. If the thought of wealth feels exciting and natural, you're probably already aligned with abundance consciousness to some degree. If it feels scary, overwhelming, or somehow wrong, there's likely some programming that needs to be addressed before you can fully embody financial prosperity. Neither response is right or wrong. They're just information about where you are and what might need attention. The goal isn't to judge your current programming. It's to become conscious of it so you can choose whether it serves your highest expression or whether you'd like to evolve beyond it. Drop a word in the comments that captures what came up for you when you imagined having significantly more wealth. Don't overthink it. Just trust the first word that arises. This simple practice of acknowledging your current relationship with abundance is actually the beginning of conscious transformation. Here's what I want you to understand about this transformation process. It's not about becoming someone different. It's about remembering who you actually are beneath all the programming and conditioning. Abundance consciousness isn't something you have to acquire. It's something you have to uncover. You were born with natural creativity, innate worthiness, and unlimited potential. These qualities were gradually obscured by well-meaning but limiting beliefs about what's possible and what you deserve. Quantum manifestation is really a process of remembering and reclaiming your natural state of creative abundance. It's about releasing the learned limitations that keep you small and stepping back into the expansive consciousness that is your birthright. It's about trusting the intelligence of life itself to support your highest expression, rather than believing you have to struggle and force your way to success. When you operate from this remembrance, when you trust your natural abundance, rather than your learned limitations, something magical happens in the quantum field. Opportunities appear that perfectly match your gifts and passions. Resources show up exactly when you need them. People enter your life who support and amplify your vision. Circumstances align in ways that feel orchestrated by an intelligence far greater than your individual mind. This isn't because you're special or chosen. It's because you're finally working with quantum principles rather than against them. You're allowing the natural flow of abundance rather than blocking it with fear and limitation. You're expressing your authentic gifts rather than hiding them out of unworthiness or fear of visibility. The quantum field is always ready to support your highest expression, but it can only deliver to you what you're willing to receive. If you're not willing to receive abundance because you don't feel worthy, the field can't override your free will. If you're not willing to be visible because you're afraid of criticism, the field can't create opportunities that require visibility. If you're not willing to charge appropriately for your value, because you feel guilty about money, the field can't bring you clients who want to pay premium prices. This is why quantum manifestation often requires you to expand your capacity to receive before you can experience greater abundance. You have to become comfortable with being seen, appreciated, valued, and rewarded for your unique contributions. You have to release the programming that says you should be small, invisible, or selfless to the point of self-sacrifice. Are you beginning to see how perfectly designed the current system is to keep you from accessing your natural abundance? You've been taught that wanting more is selfish, that charging for your gifts is somehow wrong, that being visible is dangerous, that success requires sacrifice and struggle. All of these beliefs effectively block your ability to receive the abundance that's already trying to flow toward you. But what if contribution and abundance aren't opposites? What if the more abundant you become, the more you're able to contribute to others? What if your financial prosperity actually serves the world by allowing you to express your gifts more fully and support causes you care about more generously? Ready to go even deeper into how this actually works in practical terms? The most successful people in the world understand this truth intuitively. Abundance is not about taking from others. It's about expanding the entire pie. When you operate from quantum wealth consciousness, you don't compete for limited resources. You create new value that didn't exist before. You don't extract wealth from the system. You generate wealth within the system. You become a source of abundance rather than just a seeker of it. This is the fundamental shift that changes everything. Instead of asking, how can I get more money? You start asking, how can I create more value? Instead of wondering, what can I take from this situation? You wonder, what can I contribute to this situation? Instead of operating from, there's not enough, you operate from, how can we expand what's available? When you make this shift, the quantum field responds by bringing you opportunities to create value in ways that feel natural and exciting. You stop forcing yourself into careers that drain you because they seem financially secure. You stop undercharging for your services because you're afraid no one will pay more. You stop hiding your gifts because you're worried about what others might think. Instead, you begin to trust that your authentic expression is exactly what the world needs, and that the world is ready to reward you abundantly for offering it. You understand that your unique perspective, your creative ideas, your natural talents, and your life experiences have created a combination of gifts that no one else can offer in exactly the same way. This uniqueness isn't a liability, it's your greatest asset. In a quantum universe where consciousness creates reality, your individual consciousness contributes something irreplaceable to the whole. The field needs your specific frequency, your particular way of seeing and creating, your unique contribution to the expansion of what's possible. When you fully embody this understanding, when you operate from the knowing that your abundance serves the greater good rather than detracting from it, something extraordinary happens. You stop apologizing for your success. You stop feeling guilty about your prosperity. You stop making yourself small to make others comfortable. Instead, you become a living example of what's possible when someone aligns with quantum principles of consciousness and abundance. You inspire others not through your words, but through your embodiment. You give others permission to step into their own abundance by demonstrating that it's safe, natural, and beneficial for everyone. This is how quantum manifestation becomes a force for collective transformation rather than just individual gain. When you heal your relationship with abundance, you're not just changing your own life, you're contributing to the healing of the collective consciousness around money, success, and worthiness. You're helping to dissolve the old paradigms of scarcity and competition that have created so much suffering in the world. Every person who steps into authentic abundance consciousness makes it easier for others to do the same. Every person who demonstrates that wealth and wisdom can coexist makes it safer for others to embrace their own prosperity. Every person who shows that success and service are complementary rather than contradictory expands what's possible for humanity as a whole. But here's what I need you to understand as we bring this exploration to a close. Everything I've shared with you today is worthless unless you begin to embody it in your daily life. Quantum manifestation isn't a theory to understand, it's a way of being to practice. It's not information to collect, it's transformation to experience. The quantum field doesn't respond to what you know intellectually, it responds to what you embody energetically. You can understand every principle of quantum consciousness perfectly, and still remain stuck in scarcity if you don't take the practical steps to shift your frequency and align your actions with your new understanding. So here's what I want you to do starting today. Begin to notice the abundance that's already present in your life. Not just financial abundance, but all forms of abundance. The abundance of air you breathe freely. The abundance of information available to you instantly. The abundance of beauty surrounding you constantly. The abundance of opportunities presenting themselves daily. As you train your nervous system to recognize abundance in all its forms, you'll naturally begin to attract more financial abundance as well. The field responds to your dominant frequency, and gratitude for existing abundance is one of the highest frequencies you can broadcast. Next, start making decisions from abundance consciousness even while your external circumstances are still reflecting old patterns. When you're choosing how to spend your time, choose activities that align with your highest vision, rather than just your current limitations. When you're deciding how to invest your energy, invest it in growth and creation, rather than just maintenance and survival. When opportunities arise to share your gifts, step forward with confidence, rather than hiding behind unworthiness. When people want to pay you for your value, receive it gracefully, rather than deflecting or undercharging. When abundance shows up in unexpected ways, say yes and thank you rather than questioning whether you deserve it. Remember, the quantum field is always listening to the frequency you're broadcasting through your thoughts, emotions, beliefs, and actions. Every choice you make is either reinforcing old patterns of limitation or establishing new patterns of abundance. Every decision is either moving you toward greater alignment with your natural prosperity or keeping you stuck in learned scarcity. The beautiful thing about quantum consciousness is that you can begin this transformation right now, exactly where you are. With whatever resources you currently have, you don't need permission from anyone else. You don't need to wait for better circumstances. You don't need to complete years of study or practice. You simply need to begin embodying the frequency of the person who already lives the life you desire to create. You need to start making choices from abundance consciousness rather than scarcity programming. You need to begin trusting the intelligence of the quantum field to support your highest expression rather than believing you have to figure everything out with your individual mind. This is the great secret that Wall Street doesn't want you to discover. You already have everything you need to create the abundance you desire. You already possess the consciousness that can interface with the quantum field to manifest extraordinary results. You already are the creative force that can transform not just your own life, but contribute to the transformation of the world. The only question is whether you're willing to step into this truth, to embody this power, to take responsibility for the creative force that you are. The only question is whether you're ready to stop playing small and start expressing the magnificent abundance that is your birthright. The quantum field is waiting for your decision. Infinite possibilities are available right now. Your next level of abundance is ready to manifest the moment you align with the frequency that calls it forth. The choice, as always, is yours. But now you know that it truly is a choice, and you know how to make it consciously rather than by default. Welcome to your quantum abundance. The universe has been waiting for you to remember who you really are.